Hey everyone, how's your day going? Whether it's been good or rough, you're not alone. So sit back, relax, and let's step into the world of mystery together.
I had just graduated college and was looking for a cheap place to live. Money was tight, so getting an apartment on my own wasn't an option. That's why I started browsing online for roommates. That's when I found a listing that seemed too good to be true, a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood for a ridiculously low price. The guy renting it out was named Carlos. He wasn't much of a talker, kept his messages short, and just asked when I could move in. The photos of the apartment looked decent, and I figured I wouldn't get a better deal, so I agreed to check the place out. When I met Carlos, I immediately felt uneasy. He was quiet, barely made eye contact, and had a thick accent that made his voice sound flat, emotionless. But he didn't seem dangerous, just socially awkward. And the apartment itself was fine. My room came fully furnished, which was a plus. It had a small bed, a dresser, and a nightstand. But the one thing that stood out was the massive teddy bear sitting on a shelf, staring directly at the bed. It was strange. Out of place. The bear was old, its fur slightly worn, but its glassy black eyes seemed too lifelike. Too focused. I turned to Carlos and asked, "What's up with the teddy bear?" He let out a low chuckle, not amused, more like he knew something I didn't, and simply said, "It came with the place. Best to leave it alone." There was something unsettling about the way he said it. Like it was some kind of inside joke that only he understood. But I didn't want to seem paranoid, so I just nodded and continued unpacking. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, I went to the bathroom to wash up. And that's when I noticed something strange. The mirror was fogged up, like someone had been standing in front of it, breathing onto the glass. But I had only turned the faucet on for a few seconds, definitely not enough steam for that. My stomach tightened, but I told myself it was nothing. Just my imagination. I turned off the lights and got into bed. I had just started drifting off when I heard it. A faint clicking noise. It was subtle, so quiet that, at first, I thought I was imagining it. But as I lay there, staring up at the ceiling, it continued. Click. 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 It sounded like it was coming from the kitchen. Carlos had gone to bed hours ago, so who or what was making that sound? A chill ran down my spine. Something about this place felt wrong. And that night, I realized I wouldn't be getting much sleep. The next few days, that uneasy feeling never went away. At first, I chalked it up to being in a new place, sharing an apartment with someone I barely knew. Maybe I was just overthinking things. But the more time I spent there, the stronger the feeling became, like I was constantly being watched. It wasn't paranoia. It was instinct. Whenever I walked into my room, I felt a slight shift in the air, as if someone had just been there. Sometimes I'd catch myself glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see something or someone lurking behind me. And then things started to happen. One morning, I woke up and noticed my bedroom door was slightly open. I was positive I had shut it before going to sleep. Maybe Carlos had accidentally nudged it open while walking past, but the apartment floors didn't creak, and I never once heard his footsteps outside my room. A few nights later, I woke up again, but this time to a sound. It wasn't the clicking noise from before. This was different. It was a soft chuckling, muffled and broken, as if someone was trying not to laugh. It came from the hallway. I sat up in bed, holding my breath, waiting for it to happen again. Silence. I forced myself to get up, slowly pushing my door open and peering into the hallway. The apartment was dark, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. I listened. Nothing. I told myself I was just imagining things, maybe dreaming. But as I turned to go back inside my room, I felt it again, that unshakable feeling of being watched. The next morning, something else was off. The closet door was slightly ajar. I never left it open. Ever. I hesitated before pulling it open the rest of the way. My clothes were still in place, my bags still where I had left them. But something in the air felt different, like someone had been inside it. I tried to ignore it, telling myself I was being ridiculous. But that night, as I was changing into pajamas, I heard it. A quiet, electronic whirring sound. It was faint, but in the silence of my room, I could hear it clearly. I turned my head, scanning the space, and my eyes landed on the teddy bear. It was still sitting on the shelf, still facing the bed. But something about it felt off. Then I noticed it. One of its glassy black eyes wasn't quite the same as the other. And that's when I felt my stomach drop. My breath hitched. I stared at the teddy bear, my body frozen in place. One of its eyes wasn't an eye at all. The glossy black bead on one side looked normal, but the other? There was something off about it. A tiny, almost invisible lens buried just beneath the plastic surface. A camera. A deep, gut-wrenching chill ran through me. Someone had been watching me. I reached out with trembling fingers and snatched the bear off the shelf, gripping it tightly. The fur felt stiff, the stuffing inside firm and lumpy. My hands ran over its back, searching until I felt something hard sewn beneath the fabric. My breathing grew unsteady. I dug my fingers into the seams and ripped the stitching open. Stuffing spilled out, and nestled deep inside was a tiny black recording device with a blinking red light. I felt sick. I staggered backward, the bear slipping from my grip, hitting the floor with a dull thud. How long had this been here? Who put it there? And the worst question of all, was this the only one? I turned sharply, scanning the room. The shadows felt heavier now, like they were watching me back. The air was thick, suffocating. Every object in the room, my dresser, my nightstand, the dark closet in the corner, felt sinister, like they were hiding something. I needed to confront Carlos. Heart pounding, I stormed out of my room and straight to his door. I banged on it hard. "Carlos!" I shouted. No response. I hit the door again. "Carlos, open the damn door." Silence. That's when I looked down and noticed it. The light under his door had just gone out. I hadn't heard him move. No shuffling, no footsteps. Just darkness. A fresh wave of dread coursed through me. Something was wrong. I reached for the doorknob. It was locked. I pressed my ear to the wood, straining to hear anything. Any breathing, any movement. Nothing. I took a step back, every instinct in my body screaming at me to get out. I turned and rushed into my room, locking the door behind me. My hands fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking as I pulled up my Wi-Fi settings. And that's when I saw it. Room 2, live feed. My heart slammed against my ribs. I tapped on it. A spinning wheel appeared on the screen for a few seconds before the video loaded. It was my room. The image was grainy, a slight fisheye distortion at the edges. But it was unmistakable. This was a live feed of my bedroom from the teddy bear's perspective. I dropped onto my bed, my breath coming in ragged gasps. There were more. There had to be more. I scrolled down the list of available feeds. Another one. I clicked. The hallway. Another. The bathroom. Another. The living room. My fingers hovered over the last available feed. I hesitated. Slowly, I tapped on it. Carlos's room. The screen flickered before an image appeared. A single wooden chair sat in the center of the dimly lit room. And in that chair, Carlos. My stomach clenched. He was perfectly still. His face was barely visible in the shadows, his hands resting in his lap. And then, with a slow, unnatural motion, he lifted his head. He looked directly into the camera. He was staring at me. My throat went dry. Then he smiled. Not a normal smile. A slow, creeping grin that stretched too wide, too long, as if he was enjoying something I wasn't aware of. I couldn't breathe. And then, the screen went black. I shot up from the bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The silence of the apartment suddenly felt unbearable. The walls felt too close, the darkness too thick. And then, from the other side of my bedroom door, the doorknob turned. I stared. It twisted slowly, as if someone was testing it, checking if it was locked. I took a step back. The lights flickered. And then, from the hallway, a voice, low, quiet, and amused, whispered, "You shouldn't have touched the bear." The door handle twisted slowly. Click, click, click. My breath hitched. I took a shaky step back as my brain screamed at me to do something, but my body refused to move. A soft creaking sound filled the room as the door inched open. Just a sliver. Just enough for me to see the darkness beyond it. And then the whisper came again. "You shouldn't have touched the bear." It was right there, right on the other side of the door. A low, quiet voice. Amused. Patient. "Carlos." I snapped out of it. My hand shot out, and with all the strength I had, I slammed the door shut. I twisted the lock so hard I almost broke it. Silence. Nothing. Just the heavy, suffocating quiet of the apartment pressing in around me. I stumbled backward, chest heaving. My pulse thundered in my ears, drowning out all other sounds. My hands trembled as I grabbed my phone, fingers fumbling to dial 911. But before I could even press call, knock, knock, knock. I froze. The knocking wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, rhythmic, deliberate. Carlos wasn't trying to break in. He was waiting, like he knew I had nowhere to go. I forced my lungs to take in air, gripping my phone with damp, shaking hands. I had to think. I had to. The knocking stopped, and then I heard it. The sound of something metal scraping against the door. A knife? A key? I didn't know, but my mind was too far gone to process it rationally. Panic took over. I ran to the window. The fire escape. That was my way out. I grabbed the frame, unlocking the latch with shaky hands. The cold air rushed in as I pulled it open. I had just lifted one leg onto the ledge when it... Footsteps. Heavy. Rushed. Carlos was running toward the door. I didn't think. I just threw myself through the window, tumbling onto the metal grate of the fire escape. The impact rattled my bones, but I didn't stop. I grabbed the railing and started climbing down as fast as I could. Above me, I heard the door slam open. Carlos was in my room. Then his face appeared in the window. For a second, we locked eyes. His expression was unreadable. Not angry, not scared, just watching. Then he stepped onto the windowsill. He was coming after me. I jumped the last few feet, landing hard on the pavement below. My ankle twisted, pain shooting up my leg, but I didn't stop. I ran. I didn't look back. I just ran. I didn't stop running until I reached the nearest gas station. I burst through the doors, barely able to breathe, my vision blurred. The cashier, a young guy, looked up in alarm. "Hey man, are you okay?" I gasped for air, my body shaking violently. My mouth opened, but no words came out. "Call 911. I was about to say it when my phone vibrated. I flinched, my whole body going cold. I lifted the screen. A new text message. No caller ID. Just 3 words. "You can't hide." I dropped the phone. My mind was screaming. How? How was he texting me? Then I realized he had been in my room. He had been in my room. What else had he touched? My laptop? My phone? What had he done before I woke up? A cold, suffocating nausea settled over me. I backed away from the counter, my head spinning. The cashier was still saying something, but I couldn't hear him over the blood pounding in my ears. The lights in the gas station felt too bright. The space too open, too exposed. I forced myself to breathe, to steady my hands enough to finally say it. "Call the police." When the cops arrived, I told them everything. Carlos, the cameras, the messages. They drove me back to the apartment, but when we got there, Carlos was gone. His room was empty. No clothes. No belongings. Nothing. It was like he had never been there at all. But the worst part? When they checked the security cameras for the building, the footage from the past week had been erased. Every single file gone. Like he knew I was going to run. Like he had planned for this. And that's when I realized I didn't escape. I was let go. The cops searched the apartment. Every room. Every closet. Every possible hiding spot. But Carlos was gone. His room? Completely empty. No clothes. No suitcase. No furniture. Just bare walls and a single wooden chair sitting in the center of the room. I stood there, my pulse pounding against my skull. This didn't make sense. I had just seen him. Minutes ago. He was chasing me. How could he disappear like that? One of the officers turned to me. "Are you sure he lived here?" I blinked. "What?" "There's no sign of anyone staying in this room. No personal belongings. No traces of occupancy. It doesn't look like anyone's lived here for weeks." No, that was impossible. I had seen him every day. We shared this space. He was real. I turned desperate, scanning the apartment for any sign of him, anything that proved I wasn't losing my mind. Then I saw it. The teddy bear. It was back on the shelf. My stomach twisted violently. I had ripped it apart. I had thrown it across the room. How was it back on the shelf, completely intact? A cold dread spread through my chest. I reached for it, hesitating before my fingers touched the soft fur. I turned it over. The stitches were never torn. The fabric was untouched. No sign of my desperate, frantic search from earlier. But the worst part? The eye camera was still there. Still watching me. I dropped it like it burned me, stumbling backward. The officers were still talking, but their voices felt distant, muffled. Like the world around me was closing in. I needed out. I needed to get the hell away from this place. I barely heard the officer tell me they'd write a report and that I should stay somewhere else for the night. I barely registered grabbing my keys, stepping outside, or locking the door behind me. I just walked, head spinning, mouth dry. Everything felt wrong. I stopped at the curb, trying to control my breathing. And that's when my phone vibrated. A new message. I stared at the screen, nausea rising in my throat. No caller ID. Just 3 words. Look behind you. A shiver rolled through my spine. No, I wouldn't. This was a game. He wanted me to turn around. I gritted my teeth, gripping my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. But then, the street lamp next to me flickered. A breath of cold air brushed against the back of my neck. And somewhere just behind me, I heard it. A slow, wet breath. I couldn't stop myself. I turned. The sidewalk was empty. The street was dark. No Carlos. No movement. Nothing. But then, I noticed something in the apartment window. My window. The blinds were open, but I never left them open. And standing inside my room was a figure. Tall, motionless, watching me. I couldn't make out the details, but the eyes. They were too large, too white. And then it moved. Not a normal movement. A slow, jerking tilt of the head, like it was acknowledging me. I staggered backward, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I didn't think, I just turned and ran. But before I made it 3 steps, my phone vibrated again. I didn't want to look, but I did. And this time, the message was longer. A single sentence. You left the door unlocked. I stopped breathing, because I knew it. I knew for a fact, that I locked the door when I left. I stared at the message on my phone. You left the door unlocked. My fingers felt numb. My breath hitched in my throat. I had locked it. I knew I had locked it. Then, a shadow moved in the apartment window. A slow, deliberate step away from the glass. Something was inside. Someone. I turned on my heel and ran back toward the gas station. I didn't stop until I was back inside, under the bright fluorescent lights, my chest rising and falling in short, panicked gasps. The cashier looked up at me, confused. Dude, what the hell is going on? I didn't answer. I just grabbed my phone with shaking hands and called 911. This time, they stayed on the line with me. This time, they rushed multiple officers to the scene. Within minutes, sirens filled the night air, flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the store windows. I was shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone. A female officer approached me as another squad car pulled up in front of my building. You said someone was inside? She asked, firm but calm. I nodded. I left. I locked the door. But someone is in there. They texted me. She exchanged a look with another officer before giving me a reassuring nod. Stay here. And then, guns drawn, the officers entered my apartment. I held my breath, standing at the edge of the gas station parking lot, watching. The lights in my apartment flickered through the windows as flashlights swept across the rooms. Then, commotion. I saw shadows moving rapidly, the sound of something crashing. My stomach twisted into knots. Minutes felt like hours before an officer finally came back out. But he wasn't dragging anyone out in cuffs. He wasn't saying anything at all. I took an unsteady step forward. Did you find him? The officer hesitated. No. My mind reeled. What do you mean no? Someone was in there. I saw them. His jaw tightened slightly before he spoke. We didn't find anyone. But, he hesitated. There's something you need to see. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to go back inside. I never wanted to go back inside. But something in the officer's voice made it clear. I had to. With my legs feeling like lead, I followed them up the steps. The apartment felt wrong the moment I stepped inside. Like the air had been disturbed. Like someone had just been here, but they were gone now. And then the officer pointed at my bedroom wall. I turned my head, and my skin went cold, carved, not written, but scratched deep into the paint with something sharp. Was a message. I let you go. Couldn't breathe. My vision swam as I stared at those 4 words, my mind desperately trying to process what they meant. The officer beside me exhaled slowly. Whoever this was, they didn't break in. They had a key. His words hit me like a brick. The lease, the listing for the apartment. Had Carlos even been real? Had he been the one watching me? Or was he just another pawn? A sickening realization settled over me. Whoever, whatever, had been in here had access to my apartment long before I ever moved in. And the worst part? They had the power to let me leave. Which meant they also had the power to make sure I never did. I left the apartment that night and never went back. The police never found Carlos. His name wasn't on any lease agreements. His records didn't exist. As far as the system was concerned, he was a ghost. And the cameras? The ones hidden throughout my apartment? Every single one had been wiped clean. Not destroyed, Not removed, just erased. Like whoever had been watching me was still out there, waiting, watching, for the next person to move in. I tell this story not because I want to relive it, but because I need you to know this can happen to anyone. When you move into a new place, check everything. Check the mirrors, the air vents, the smoke detectors, because you never really know who was there before you. Or worse, who never left.